In the first video of this series, we talked about the three traps that collapse retirement plans from the inside. In the second video, we looked at what inflation is doing to retirement savings from the outside right now in 2026. In this third and final video, I am going to give you the complete action plan, specific steps in a specific order built for the retirement reality of 2026 and not for a world that no longer exists. By the time this video ends, you will have everything you need to review your own retirement, identify exactly where your vulnerabilities are, and start making the adjustments that determine whether your money lasts as long as you do. Let me start with the most important mindset shift in this entire series, because without it, none of the specific steps matter in the way they should. Most people think about retirement as a finished product. You saved, you planned, you stopped working, and now you execute the plan. What the most financially secure retirees actually do is treat retirement as an ongoing process that requires the same active attention as building wealth did during your working years. The market changes, inflation moves, healthcare costs shift, life expectancy extends, government benefit rules get updated. A retirement plan that was built 5 years ago and never touched is almost certainly operating on assumptions that are no longer accurate. And every year, those assumptions drift further from reality the more expensive they become to correct. The first step in the retirement fix is what I call the honest audit. And it is something most people avoid because looking at real numbers honestly can feel uncomfortable. But the cost of not knowing is always higher than the cost of knowing, no matter what the numbers show. Here is exactly what the honest audit covers. Pull together your actual monthly income from all sources: government benefits, pension, investment withdrawals, any part-time income, everything. Then pull together your actual monthly expenses. Not what you think you spend, but what your bank and credit card statements show you actually spent over the last 3 months, averaged together. The gap between those two numbers, positive or negative, is your current retirement financial position. If income exceeds expenses, you have a buffer, and the question is whether it is large enough to survive inflation, growing your expenses over the next 15 years. If expenses exceed income, you have a deficit, and the question is how quickly it is growing and what specific adjustments close it. If this series has been giving you information you genuinely needed and have not been finding elsewhere, subscribe to this channel right now. Every single week, I post content built specifically for people over 60 who are serious about their retirement security. Not generic advice, not content designed for someone 30 years younger. Real strategies for the real retirement challenges of 2026. This channel was built for you. Subscribe now before we go into the steps that follow. The second step is recalculating your withdrawal rate with current numbers, not the ones you used when you first retired. The 4% rule is the most widely used guideline in retirement planning, but it is exactly that, a guideline. And it was built on historical data that may not perfectly match your current situation. Here is how to recalibrate it honestly. Take your current portfolio value and multiply it by 0.035 to get a conservative annual withdrawal amount at 3.5%. Compare that number to what you are actually withdrawing annually right now. If you are withdrawing significantly more than 3.5% of your current portfolio value, particularly if your portfolio has declined from market volatility in recent years, that is a red flag that your current pace of withdrawal is putting pressure on your long-term sustainability. Even a modest reduction in withdrawals in the early years of a market downturn can extend the life of a retirement portfolio by several years, because it reduces the number of shares you are forced to sell at depressed prices. The third step is building what I call your 3-bucket defense, and it is the most practical, structural change most retirees can make to protect themselves from both market volatility and the ongoing pressure of inflation. The first bucket is your immediate bucket, 1 to 2 years of living expenses held in cash or very short-term bonds, completely separate from your investment portfolio. This bucket exists for one purpose: so that when the market drops, you never have to sell investments at a loss just to pay your monthly bills. You live from this bucket while the market recovers, and then you refill it when conditions improve. The second bucket is your medium-term bucket, covering years 3 through 10 of retirement income, held in a mix of bonds and dividend-paying investments that generate reliable income with lower volatility than pure equities. This bucket is your bridge between the immediate cash you need and the long-term growth your portfolio needs to stay ahead of inflation. The third bucket is your long-term bucket, your remaining portfolio invested for growth over 10 plus years. This is where you keep your equity exposure, the portion of your retirement savings that needs to outpace inflation over decades to preserve your purchasing power. Each bucket has a specific job, and together they protect you from the two biggest threats we have covered in the series simultaneously. The fourth step addresses the healthcare gap specifically, because healthcare is the spending category most retirement plans underestimate the most, and the one that causes the most damage over a long retirement. If you have not run a specific healthcare cost projection for your own situation recently, here is how to do it now. Take your current annual healthcare spending, including all premiums, prescriptions, and out-of-pocket costs. Multiply that number by 1.06 for each year of your expected remaining retirement. That 6% annual growth rate reflects the average pace of healthcare inflation over the last decade and gives you a realistic projection of what healthcare will cost you at age 75, 80, and 85. The number that comes out of that calculation is almost always higher than what people expect, and seeing it clearly is what motivates the specific planning it requires, whether that is a dedicated healthcare reserve account, a long-term care insurance policy if you are young enough and healthy enough to qualify at a reasonable premium, or a Medicaid planning strategy if you are further along in retirement. The fifth step is the one most people skip because it requires a conversation they would rather not have, and that is the estate and legacy piece. Everything you have built over a lifetime, your savings, your home, your investments, your accounts, all of it is at risk of not reaching the people you intended for if the right documents are not current and correct. A beneficiary designation on every financial account that reflects your current wishes overrides a will and passes assets directly without probate. A will that was written 20 years ago under different family circumstances may not reflect what you actually want today. A durable power of attorney ensures that someone you trust can manage your finances if you become unable to do so before you pass, without requiring the court to appoint someone on your behalf. These documents are not complicated to update, but they are almost always out of date for people who set them up once and never revisited them. The sixth and final step is the one that makes all the others sustainable over time, and it is the simplest. Set a specific recurring date once a year, the same time every year, to run through every step in this audit again with current numbers. Not because you expect a crisis every year, but because small annual adjustments made proactively cost almost nothing, while large corrections made reactively after years of drift can cost everything. The retirees who stay financially secure through a long retirement are almost never the ones who had the perfect plan on day one. They are the ones who checked in honestly every year and made the small adjustments that kept their plan aligned with their actual life. You now have the complete retirement survival framework: the honest audit to know exactly where you stand, the recalibrated withdrawal rate built on current numbers, the 3-bucket defense against market volatility and inflation, the healthcare cost projection that tells you what you actually need to budget, the estate documents that protect what you have built, and the annual review that keeps everything aligned over time. This is the system that the most financially resilient retirees use, not because they knew something nobody else knows, but because they stayed engaged with their finances as actively in retirement as they did while building them. If you watched those 3 videos in this series and got value from them, drop a comment right now telling me which step in today's video you are going to do first this week. Not someday, this week. Because the gap between knowing and doing is exactly where most retirement plans lose the battle, and I want to know that this series moved you from one to the other. This channel exists for one reason: to give people over 60 the honest, specific, practical retirement guidance they deserve and that is genuinely hard to find, built specifically for this stage of life. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. New videos every single week. And share this series with someone you care about who is in or near retirement, because this information is exactly what most people need and almost nobody is giving them in one place.